All right, I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, thank you for the confirmation. I'm sorry about that. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 421, Black Blockchain Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Docket and description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to get on the panel and engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you. When you click on the link, make sure that you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Let me give a shout out to people who are already waiting. Unsunk in One Piece, Kareem Austin, hello to you. Black Scorpion, what up? Pitmaster C, salute. Terrence Foster Jr., good evening to you. Jimmy J, what up? David Smith, what up? Excalibur, salute. All right, let's get it in, man. All right, let me bring this up. All right, first item on the docket is from Coindesk.com. Blockchain projects are just entering the Netscape phase. This is op-ed. It is always wise to look ahead, but difficult to look further than you can see. Recently, let me expand this out. Recently, Jill Carlson wrote a piece for Coindesk that inspired me to think through counter arguments to the points she made, or she shared. Much of the following is based on 100 in-depth interviews during the last year before for a base layer of my podcast. While I'm a strong proponent of diversity in thought and opinion, and Jill is one of the most respected investors and thinkers in digital assets, I disagree with her piece for 2 reasons. One, I believe the time and scale of review doesn't properly factor where in the maturation cycle things in digital assets are. And 2, I believe it diminishes the work being done in the infrastructure of digital assets to propel adoption. When I talk to my former peers in the family office world, I often discuss parallels between digital assets and past periods of technological innovations. The digital asset ecosystem needs to evaluate its progress or lack thereof against the historical diffusion of innovation. Below, I discuss some key project updates with releases this year, showing maturation of the technology ecosystem. A quick incidental point first. Jill's article is titled "Cryptocurrency is Most Useful for Breaking Laws," which is apt, as Jerome Blanchard describes in his book, Crimes of the Future. Criminals have always been early adopters of new technology. For example, the Bonnet Gang, a French criminal anarchist group that was active in the 1910s, were among the first to make use of a getaway car after their armed robberies. The police would pursue them on bicycles or horseback. In the early to mid 1990s, I remember my family getting our first home PC, connecting a modem and hearing that horrible dial-up sound when signing in onto AOL. It didn't always connect, and many times when it did, it was painfully slow. I remember ugly hyperlink websites and thinking, no way am I putting my credit card into this and buying something. Then in 1997, 1998, when I got to college, second generation websites started popping up with better UI, UX, user interface, user experience. There was vastly better developer tooling, improved infrastructure, encryption, and regulatory clarity. I think a lot of people who question crypto and blockchain now forget or didn't experience these early days. Joe writes about how we are collectively evaluating digital assets and making a determination that I think perhaps we can have been judging cryptocurrency's success or lack thereof according to a false metric. We would not judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Our judgment is marred by our collective timescales and expectations. We have become a society of now venturing outdoors to rent a movie, buying food or buy food or other household supplies has been replaced by a click of a Netflix, Postmates, and Amazon Prime. We expect to plug in a device or download an app and for it to work perfectly. In the early days, we just hoped we didn't blow up our computer. This is very true. This shift in mindset to on-demand has altered our idea of how quickly things should happen, and in my opinion, has negatively affected our perspective on digital assets and blockchains. Most blockchain technology appearing now started as academic theory 20 or 30 years ago. For example, zero knowledge proofs were first conceived in 1989 by Shafi Goldwasser, Silvio McCauley, and Charles Rakoff in their paper, The Knowledge Complexity of Interactive Proof Systems. In 1968, Douglas Engelbart gave what is known as the mother of all demos, a live demonstration featuring the introduction of a complete computer hardware and software system called NOS. The 90-minute presentation demonstrated almost all of the fundamental elements of modern personal computing: Windows, hypertext, graphics, efficient navigation, and command input, video conferencing, the computer mouse, and word processing. It wasn't until the late 1990s that home computers with all of these capabilities entered our homes and workforces. Joe says digital assets don't provide marginal improvements on legacy financial services and systems that often blockchain-based systems will fail when compared to more conventional centralized solutions. However, in my opinion, there are companies and projects in the works that address problems in the financial system. To paraphrase Mark Anderson, I believe we just entering, this is poorly written, I believe we are just entering the Netscape phase of digital assets. Wiry, a company that predominantly uses the Bitcoin blockchain, cuts the time and expense of cross-border payments. While banks take up to 2 to 3 days and charge between 4% and 6% of international money transfers, Wiry completes transactions in less than 6 hours, charging less than 1%. One of the more important developments in 2019 was the mainnet launch of Cosmos, an interoperable blockchain protocol that began work 5 years ago. It facilitates the transfer of data between existing chains, creating an internet of blockchains. Prior to 2019, we have had disparate, distributed and decentralized systems being built to handle file storage, query, search, and more. Components necessary to build robust applications comparable to Web 1.0 and 2.0. Those components need to talk to each other, and without protocols like Cosmos, that becomes fairly impossible. In a similar vein, 0x is a protocol that facilitates the peer-to-peer exchange of Ethereum-based assets. It released version 3 to its protocol. This is so poorly written. An upgrade that will deepen liquidity for the DeFi or the DeFi ecosystem and improve the developer experience of building on 0x. Meanwhile, projects are improving how they handle governance, the ability to get distributed groups of network facilitators together to work together. Aragon is one of the most important projects in the space, and after 2 years of design, development, and testing, the Aragon client went live on mainnet for the first time near the end of 2018. By September 2019, Aragon 1 shipped Aragon 0.8, featuring a vastly improved onboarding and user experience. This year, Parity led the way with a major advance in Substrate, Parity Technologies blockchain framework. Substrate's modular architecture abstracts away as much blockchain development as possible, freeing teams to discuss on crafting their project's unique business logic. It could have a similar impact as Wix, which launched in 2006, making website development simple and easy for anyone. Argent shipped a radically better crypto wallet, targeting one of the major pain points in crypto: seed phrases. It has shown that you can be self-custodial, decentralized. Argent uses a system called Guardians, where you can pick any Ethereum address to help recover your wallet. Guardians also lock it and approve transfers over your daily limit. Now, if you lose your phone, you can recover your wallet in a couple of taps. People who claim nothing has happened yet, or that digital assets and blockchains will only have limited use cases, such as breaking laws or social contracts, only see patches of the quilt. Because of our on-demand mentality, we have lost patience. We expect things to work immediately, but this build-out is a tectonic shift, not only for those building and participating in these new applications and platforms, but for the people who will eventually use them. It takes time. Yeah, I can't say I disagree with this, poorly written as it is. I can't say I disagree with it. I think that he's hitting the nail on the head. We're in the third iteration of blockchain in just 10 years. You circle back 2009, the first launches of it, and then by 2012, you started seeing that variation change for Bitcoin, which is what drove blockchain in the first place. And then by 2017, we started to see 2.0 start to emerge, and now we're at the cusp of 3.0 in terms of Ethereum. But for all intents and purposes, we're moving into the third iteration of blockchain development as it stands right now. Where it goes from here, I don't really know. I don't know what the future holds for blockchain at this point. I think 3.0 will probably last a couple more years. You'll probably see 2022, late 2022, early 2023, a variation change. And I think I also agree with the article as well that they're coming up with these new low code, no code sort of frameworks that you can actually develop on the blockchain without actually knowing how to code. And so it's kind of a see and say plug and play sort of perspective, like he mentioned. Wix. Wix is a service, a website development service where you can kind of drag and drop what you want your website to look like, and then poof, it works. It's kind of like an easy bake oven for kids. When kids had easy bake ovens, they put things in there, even though they didn't know how to cook, and then things came out and it was actually edible. That's how they're looking at this. And I agree with him as well that people got caught up in the instant gratification of on-demand, Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, social media, the ability to just pick up a device and put, move your thumb around and get that instant gratification of access, on-demand access to content has made people impatient about blockchain. But in reality, it's good that blockchain goes through these iterations, because if it didn't, it would be sloppy. There's no way that you can develop a digital transformation without going through some iterations of it. So, all right, let me get to the next next item on the docket. All right, this is from Forbes.com. National governments around the globe look to embrace blockchain. Expand this out. In spite of the original philosophy behind Bitcoin, a tool to protect and empower sovereign citizens worldwide against oppressive regimes and predatory financial institutions, more and more nations are finding legitimate value in endorsing cryptocurrency. Established nations like the United States and China are taking a nuanced approach and applying the tech to various departments, and smaller alternatives like Malta and the Virgin Islands have looked to crypto as a means to bolster and expand their local economies. But here's what's happening in the world right now. The United States, with a regulatory stance on crypto typically seen as archaic and lethargic, the USA doesn't typically come to mind as a champion of blockchain. However, there are many government departments actively exploring and deploying applications that leverage the blockchain for various uses. For example, the United States now employs a private blockchain through which yearly grants are awarded to different departments through a project called Grant Solutions. This initiative creates a centralized record of grants, whilst also improves the ease with which recurring grants can be renewed and distributed each year. Per the previous report, the US government is additionally building out an encrypted healthcare data exchange through the Inform Incubator program, allowing citizens to leverage their personal healthcare data and sell their data to researchers. In other words, they're monetizing healthcare information for the patient themselves. The Joint Chiefs of Staff has also embarked on a pilot that utilizes the blockchain to communicate 3D printing files to military bases. As it can be quite difficult to replace older equipment, the military is increasingly relying on 3D printed parts to repair weapons and vehicles. The blockchain enables the communication of these files in an encrypted manner that cannot be intercepted by unwanted eyes. This is actually a supply chain solution. China. Global headlines have emphasized a recent shift in China's stance towards blockchain technology. Recently, a series of statements by Chinese President Xi Jinping has indicated that the People's Republic of China plans to dive headfirst into blockchain integration in a number of areas. China's aggressive use of surveillance on its population and controversial developments such as the social credit system, which assigns a reputation to each citizen for their behavior, suggests that their blockchain endorsement may be a means to further surveil and restrict their almost 1.4 billion citizens. Integral properties of cryptocurrency include transparency and immutability. A state-backed cryptocurrency means that government officials have completed and unrestricted access to the entirety of every citizen's financial history and dealings. This could potentially be further expanded to blacklist and reverse unwanted activity in the eyes of the government. It's interesting. Of course, future adoption by China is largely regarded as speculation until more comprehensive developments have come to light. However, this would not be the first time a regime looked to blockchain to further monetary control. North Korea and Russia have both been involved in similar projects. Venezuela. In 2018, Venezuela launched its oil-backed petro cryptocurrency as a token of the NEM blockchain. The purpose of the central currency is to improve liquidity to the country's oil reserves and implement a more stable alternative to a national VEF crippled by hyperinflation. Additionally, the petro was seen as a mechanism for Venezuela to circumvent sanctions and alleviate difficulty to conduct foreign trade. However, it is unclear whether its oil-backed coin has seen significant acceptance by international business partners. Malta. Despite interest from bad actors, the overwhelming use of blockchain by national governments have been to stimulate their economies and improve their infrastructure. The majority of the first national cryptocurrency adopters were small nations looking to gain an edge and accelerate national growth. Malta, in particular, has seen huge growth through its blockchain-friendly legislation. With the explosion of the space in 2017, a number of recently formed and massively growing cryptocurrency startups moved operations to Malta. The most notable of these is seen through the relocation of Binance headquarters, a leading exchange valued at over $2 billion US, with a national GDP of less than $13 billion in 2017. This single instance represents a significant boost to the island's economy and a major proponent for further prosperity. The British Virgin Islands, a recent adopter of cryptocurrency as a cash alternative, is found in the British Virgin Islands. BVI has recently emphasized an intention to focus its efforts on the emerging financial technology sector. And as an aspiring fintech leader, the archipelago is looking to digitize its economy with the help of a central digital currency. On December 3rd, BVI hosted its Digital Economy Symposium to educate and strategize with 100 stakeholders across the island, private and public sectors alike. The symposium included a presentation by Life Labs on the ongoing BVI Life project. The project is developing a central cryptocurrency that is backed 1-1 by US dollar to address hurdles between cross-island business and consumption. The initiative also encompasses a rapid cash response RCR system that will likely provide ample funds in response to any potential future disasters. 2017's Hurricane Irma spawned over $3 billion in damages and untold trauma for citizens, and the lack of liquid funds inhibited sufficient cleanup for months afterward. What does this really mean? Well, as modern society transitions to a global digital economy, blockchain represents a key tool for third world and developing economies to transition to digital in pace with established and first world counterparts. This benefit is particularly impactful to areas currently dominated by fiat that are hindered by an inadequate or non-existent banking infrastructure. This is very true. From a nation state perspective, this is very true, that they are looking to leverage lines of code as pieces of infrastructure and mechanisms to advance their society. And so that's why we have to focus on blockchain development. right, next item on the docket is from VentureBeat. IBM taps blockchain to make coffee sourcing traceable. IBM and coffee makers are teaming up to bring the tracking capabilities of blockchain to sourcing coffee. It will enable a new app dubbed Thank My Farmer to allow coffee drinkers to trace their coffee beans back to the original farmer. That is pretty dope. The app will let the consumer learn about their coffee and even support the farmer who grew the beans. The whole idea is to bring traceability, efficiency, fairness, and communication across the coffee supply chain, which supports the $200 billion industry. IBM will show the project as CES at CES 2020, the big tech trade show this week in Las Vegas. The IBM blockchain helped create the Farmer Connect traceability platform, and it worked with global coffee supply chain companies, including Bears Coffee, the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation, FNC, Itochu, Jacobs Dowry Egberts, JDE, the J.M. Smuckers Company, Rabobank, RGC Coffee, Volocaf, Sukafina, and Yara International. Blockchain is the transparent and secure distributed ledger that makes cryptocurrencies possible. Since it offers secure identification for products, it helps get around problems like fraud or counterfeiting. Coffee drinkers today consume more than half a trillion cups per year, and as many as 2/3 of consumers aged 19 to 24 surveyed, they prefer to buy coffee that is sustainably grown and responsibly sourced. But despite, well, let me explain this out. But despite progress by international certifying bodies, there's still a lack of knowledge and accountability around the need for coffee farmers to earn sufficient living for bringing their product to market. IBM said its large global supply chain makes coffee traceability difficult. Once grown, beans make several steps, including at coops, exporters, shippers, importers, roasters, distributors, and retailers before finally reaching the consumer. Each participant in this complex system tracks only their small segment of the journey, and each uses its own system to log data. This means that information about the product is fragmented. Consumers hoping to close the gap between their neighborhood barista and the farmer who grew their coffee now have a solution thanks to blockchain technology like behind IBM Food Trust. Farmer Connect is introducing the Thank My Farmer app, a consumer-facing application that pulls information directly from the blockchain in a standardized way that can be used across the industry. It connects the users to farmers, traders, roasters, and brands. The information is presented on an interactive map, allowing each product to tell a story in a simple and scalable way. Thank My Farmer also presents sustainability projects in coffee communities and an opportunity for consumers to support them. Blockchain technology brings all the parties in the coffee supply chain together, simplifying the exchange and tracking of information and payments and enabling more trust. It creates a permanent digitized chain of transactions that cannot be altered. Each participant on the network has an exact copy of the data. In addition to the blockchain are shared throughout the network based on each participant's level of permission. How farmers, wholesalers, traders, and retailers can interact more efficiently using comprehensive, near real-time access to data, and consumers can have new insights about their origins of the products they consume. David Behrens, president of Farmer Connect, said in a statement that the aim is humanizing each coffee drinker's relationship with their daily cup. He said consumers can play an active role in sustainability governance by supporting coffee farmers in developing nations. With blockchain and the consumer app, the group can create a virtuous cycle. So this map this product's life cycle map is how they determine the sustainability and traceability of the coffee beans from the grower all the way to the retail. So you can see right here, the farmer that goes to the processor, and from the processor to the shipper, and from the shipper to the roaster, and from the roaster to the consumer. Right, so that's the retail aspect. And then the contributor is the final step. The new mobile application will launch to the general market at the beginning of 2020. Users in the US and Canada will be able to scan QR codes on 1850 brand premium single origin coffee. European consumers will be able to access the Thank My Farmer app through a new single origin brand, Bayer's 1769, roasted at Bayer's Coffee. As the app expands to 2020, large and small companies will be invited to join, and coffee drinkers will be able to support communities where their coffee is grown by funding local projects. Farmer Connect is currently incorporating self-sovereign identity, a new form of digital identity built on distributed ledger technology in collaboration with the Sovereign Foundation. This closes the loop on a circular economy to improve smallholder livelihoods while delivering transparency and a better experience for the consumer. It's really cool. This work with Farmer Connect is also another example of IBM extending blockchain technology adoption across many industries and use cases, providing consumers with more insights. IBM has convened blockchain networks in areas including food safety, global shipping, trade finance, responsible mining, and many more areas. Raj Rao, general manager of IBM Food Trust, said in a statement that the project is an example of how blockchain can be a channel for real change in how people trust the goods they consume and those who make them. So this is more of a, this aligns well with social justice from a technology standpoint. And so it's looking to ensure that there's a proper chain of custody between the farmer and the retail itself and the consumer. And so what this is allowing them to do is actually allowing more transparency in areas that we typically would have never seen even a year or so ago. Now you have this sort of network set up. I think this is really cool. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the year. All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from Bain Crypto. Here are the 5 blockchain projects to keep an eye on in 2020. Let's face it, 2019 was anything but smooth sailing for many blockchain company projects. There were ups, downs, and several projects have essentially collapsed last year, burning the hands of thousands of investors. However, as we have seen time and time again, the cryptocurrency industry moves at breakneck speed, and a single significant development is often sufficient to reverse the course of the market and reset investor expectations. Likewise, several projects are building something sustainable and could be poised to shake up the industry in the next year. With that in mind, let's take a look at the 5 hot prospects we think are worth keeping a close eye on in the coming months. Quant. Unlike other platforms that seek to operate as a mostly closed silo, keeping all developments on chain and eschewing blockchain interconnectivity, Quant is an entirely different kind of project. Its entire purpose revolves around improving the communication between other blockchains. Beyond this, it also helps to connect other legacy and modern systems to the growing blockchain ecosystem through its Overledger technology. By using Quant's Overledger, developers can build decentralized applications that can run on multiple blockchains. These so-called multi-chain applications, maps, can be built in as little as 8 minutes, helping projects quickly transfer data and provide a streamlined experience across multiple blockchains. This has the knock-on effect of reducing the duplication of efforts and cutting down development costs considerably, since map developers need only build a single implementation of their application. The platform is currently live and operational, and despite only concluding its initial coin offering ICO in mid-2018, Quant has already formed some serious partnerships, including the likes of Oracle, Pay.uk, and UCL Blockchain. Quant is set to become a major platform used for regulatory compliant security tokens in 2020, and its plan is to implement cross-chain atomic swaps across institutional grade blockchains. Because of this, as a platform looking to tackle arguably some of the most challenging industry's problems, Quant could be set to reap incredible rewards if it is successful. As such, it is one to watch. Ocean Protocol. Built as a decentralized data exchange protocol, Ocean Protocol is designed to help data providers and consumers securely share information while helping to democratize access to important data that only well-heeled tech firms can currently afford to harness. Part of the reason Ocean Protocol may rise to prominence in 2020 is due to the aggressive development and expansion strategy planned for the year. Within 12 months, the team behind Ocean Protocol planned to launch at least 2 versions of the protocol, termed version 1 and version 2, respectively. Version 2 is currently scheduled for the full rollout early 2020 and will bring AWS and Azure integration, case-specific marketplaces, as well as competition and bounty rewards for service execution agreements. Version 3, which should complete development in the latter half of 2020, will build on the functionality of version 2, adding Web 3.0 integration, including interaction with other decentralized projects, in addition to the introduction of cryptographic proofs for the verification of service conditions, by giving individuals, businesses, and organizations of all sizes a way to monetize their data and help it to decentralize AI workflows. It is clear how Ocean Protocol could begin to gain prominence as we move forward into the age of AI. This is going to be really cool. Tezos. One project that received a great deal of attention in 2019 is Tezos, a so-called self-evolving blockchain designed to host scalable decentralized applications, or dApps, while being governed by stakeholders. In 2019 alone, Tezos introduced 3 new programming languages for smart contracts, registered more than 400 delegates, and implemented several protocol updates, and recently nailed several prominent partnerships, including one with Brazil's largest investment bank. These achievements and more help the cryptocurrency climb the ranking to achieve secure the position of the 10th largest cryptocurrency after XTZ gained more than 200% in 2019. All right, Constellation. Constellation is a little known blockchain project that is designed to make big data more manageable and accessible than ever before. The project accomplishes this through the use of highly scalable data structure known as directed acyclic graph, DAG. the same technology used as the basis of IOTA's Tango chain. As it is becoming increasingly clear, big data is also big business. Hence why many of the largest corporations are investing in significant sums to help extract meaningful information from data sets so large that few organizations can process them efficiently. However, the advent of machine learning and artificial intelligence combing through this data is coming cheaper and more efficient by the day. Built for big data validation, notarization, and scalable interoperability, Constellation could become the first platform to allow individuals and organizations of any size to really get to grips with their data. In light of this, the team behind the project has seen diligently working together, working to make the technology as accessible as possible. It has been building strategic partnerships with the likes of Chainlink and the aforementioned quant network. So this is about big data. Besides this, back in August, Constellation Network formed an agreement with the United States Air Force to help securely automate its big data and help unlock siloed information. No small feat for a project still considered to be experimental. It's pretty interesting. Factom is one of the earliest enterprise-grade smart contract platforms ever launched and has been kicking around since 2014. Despite being one of the first smart contract capable blockchains, it largely failed to gain momentum. Since Ethereum initially became the platform favored by smart contract and decentralized application developers. However, it appears that Factor may be maybe a sleeping beast that has only just started to awaken. In November 2019, Factor won a $200,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to help combat import fraud and verify the digital identity of imposters. Its second reward from the DHS Silicon Valley Innovation Program. Likewise, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also provided Factom a $500,000 grant in 2016 to fund the development of a prototype digitized medical record system for those living in remote regions. Interesting. This is really, they have some really cool stuff that they're planning out. So, yeah, pay attention to the projects for this year, because these are going to be things to pay attention to, especially the big data one from Constellation, as well as Ocean Protocol, connecting multiple clouds. Quant will be something to watch as well. So. All right, let me get to this last one on the docket because this is what we came here for. All right, give me 1 second. All right, this is Hyperledger Sawtooth. Let me read the introduction, and then we'll discuss more about it. Expand this out. Hyperledger Sawtooth is an enterprise blockchain platform for building distributed ledger applications and networks. The design philosophy targets keeping ledgers distributed and making smart contracts safe, particularly for enterprise use. Sawtooth simplifies blockchain application development by separating the core system from the application domain. Application developers can specify the business rules appropriate for their application using the language of their choice without needing to know their underlying design of the core system. Sawtooth is also highly modular. The modularity enables enterprises and consortia to make policy decisions that they are best equipped to make. Sawtooth's core design allows applications to choose the transaction rules, permissioning, and consensus algorithms that support their unique business needs. Sawtooth is an open source project under the Hyperledger umbrella. For information on how to contribute, see the community is here. Okay, so about distributed ledgers, a distributed ledger is another term for blockchain. We know that. It distributes a database, a ledger, of transactions to all participants in the network, so-called pairs or nodes. There is no central administrator or centralized data storage. And in essence, it is distributed. The blockchain database is shared among potentially untrusted participants and is demonstratively identical on all nodes in the network. All participants have the same information. The blockchain database is unalterable history of all transactions that it uses block hashes to make it easy to detect and prevent attempts to alter their history. It's secure. All changes are performed by transactions that are signed by known identities. So Hyperledger Sawtooth is an enterprise grade platform. This isn't some, rogue project looking for lots of investment by putting up these tokens. This is tokenless or tokenless. It does not have any tokens involved. So there's no need to buy into anything. This is a completely different platform. Distinctive features of Sawtooth. Sawtooth makes it easy to develop. Expand this out. Sawtooth makes it easy to develop and deploy an application by providing a clear separation between the application level and the core system level. Sawtooth provides smart contract abstraction that allows application developers to write contract logic in a language of their choice. An application can be a native business logic or a smart contract virtual machine. In fact, both types of applications can coexist on the same blockchain. Sawtooth allows these design decisions to be made in the transaction processing layer, which allows multiple types of applications to exist in the same instance of the blockchain network. Each application defines the custom transaction processes for its unique requirements. Sawtooth provides several example transaction families to serve as a model for low-level functions, such as maintaining chain-wide settings and storing on-chain permissions, and for specific applications such as performance analysis and storing block information. Transaction processors, SDKs, or software development kits, are available in multiple languages to streamline creation of new contract languages, including Python, JavaScript, Go, C++, Java, and Rust. A provided REST API simplifies client development by adapting validator communication to standard HTTP JSON. So what they're saying is this platform is so modular that that you can separate the application layer from the core layer itself, and that the varying languages such as Python, JavaScript, Go, C++, Java, and Rust as a separate contract languages makes it interoperable with those who are not good at any one language or any of a broad set of languages. So if you're only good at Python, you can write your contracts languages in Python, or if you're good at JavaScript, you write your contract languages in JavaScript. So you don't need to know C++ and Java. There's actually an alternative, and they've left it open for that reason. And so because of that, it makes it a very mature platform to work with. Private networks with Sawtooth permissioning features. Sawtooth is built to solve the challenges of the permissioned private networks. Clusters of Sawtooth nodes can be easily deployed with separate permissioning. There is no centralized service that could potentially leak transactions, transaction patterns, or other confidential information. The blockchain stores the settings that specify the permissions, such as roles and identities, so that all participants in the network can access this information. So what they're saying here is that the governance of permissioning allows for granularization. So granularization means that we can get it down to a person, place, or thing that has access to information that's critical within the network itself. This is not exclusive to Hyperledger Sawtooth, but it's an actual mature feature that they're talking about. Parallel transaction execution. Most blockchains require serial transaction execution in order to guarantee consistent ordering at each node of the network. Sawtooth includes an advanced parallel scheduler that splits transactions into parallel flows based on the locations in state which are accessed by a transaction. Sawtooth isolates the execution of transactions from one another while maintaining contextual changes. So when they say it works in parallel, what they're saying is that they have decoupled those transactions from the changes itself. So you can basically, if you think about a Formula One car, it can make a pit stop, get refueled, get their tires swapped, all without having the driver get out of the vehicle. So it's making all these changes without the driver actually being altered. All right, event system. Hyperledger supports Sawtooth. Hyperledger Sawtooth supports creating and broadcasting events. This allows applications to subscribe to events that occur or related to the blockchain, such as a new block being committed or switching to a new fork. Subscribe to an application specific events defined by a transaction family. Relay information about the execution of a transaction back to clients without storing that data in state. So events are things that happen within the network or within an application. An event can be anything, such as logging in, logging out, dips in bandwidth, spikes in bandwidth. These sort of events that are being triggered can be broadcasted out the network, and you can receive it as a verified owner on the network or a participant on the network. Subscriptions are submitted and serviced over a ZMQ socket. So that's the layer that allows the protocols to communicate with each other. Ethereum contract compatibility with Ceph. The Sawtooth Ethereum Integration Project, Ceph, extends the interoperability of Sawtooth platform to Ethereum. Ethereum Virtual Machine EVM smart contracts can be deployed to smart Sawtooth using Ceph transaction family. So what they're saying is the maturity of Ethereum smart contracts are compatible with the Sawtooth platform because of the Sawtooth Ethereum integration that allows that to have some interoperability, because Ethereum is very popular and it's actually the most popular platform for smart contract and application publishing. And so if you wrote something on Ethereum, you don't have to worry about rewriting it. Sawtooth, Hyperledger Sawtooth has allowed that sort of interoperability where you can plug and play those contracts to it. Pluggable consensus algorithms. And a blockchain consensus is the process of building agreement among a group of mutually distrusting participants. Algorithms for achieving consensus with arbitrarily faults generally require some form of voting among a known set of participants. General approaches include Nakamoto-style consensus, which elects a ledger through some form of lottery, and variants of the traditional Byzantine fault tolerance (BFT) algorithms, which use multiple rounds of explicit votes to achieve consensus. So what they're saying here is um, the lottery system, which is a random number generation, is the one that does the consensus, as well as the BFT is what creates the redundancy. So there's an actual, the algorithm is actually a very secure one. There's no favoring where if someone is bad and they plug into the network that they'll automatically be accepted within that network. No, there's a lottery that goes into that. Sawtooth extracts the core concepts of consensus and isolates consensus from transaction semantics. The interface supports plugging in various consensus implementations. More importantly, Sawtooth allows different types of consensus on the same blockchain. The consensus is selected during the initial network setup and can be changed on a running blockchain with a transaction. So what they're saying is it's not a set it and forget it, it's dynamic. If I set something today, by the time the day is over, there could be some changes made on the fly. I don't have to actually pull my car over to adjust my seatbelt or to adjust my mirrors or something like that. I could change it as I'm going along without actually having some issues with continuity. Sawtooth currently supports these consensus implementations: proof of elapsed time, POET, a Nakamoto style consensus algorithm that is designed to be a production-grade protocol capable of supporting large network populations. Proof of elapsed time relies on secure instruction execution to achieve the scaling benefits of a Nakamoto-style consensus algorithm without power consumption drawback of the proof of work algorithm. So proof of work actually worked on cycles to determine its place. It's cost of work. So how many blocks have been crunched, or how much work has been, how much labor has been put into it, as opposed to the time that it's actually that has gone on, which is POET. So POET is actually a lot more cost efficient and productive than POW, which is proof of work. That's a good thing about Hyperledger Sawtooth. It uses a completely different consensus, but it supports multiple consensus as well. All right, sample transaction families in Sawtooth. The data model and transaction language are implemented in a transaction family. While we expect users to build custom transaction families that reflect the unique requirements of their ledgers, we provide several core transaction families as models. Integer key, used for testing deployed ledgers. Settings, provide a reference implementation for storing on-chain configuration settings. Identity, handles on-chain permissioning for transactor and validator keys to streamline managing identities for a list of public keys. Additional transaction families provide models for specific areas. Small bank handles performance analysis or benchmarking and performance testing when comparing the performance of blockchain systems. The transaction family is based on the HStore small bank benchmark. Block info provides a methodology for storing information that a configurable member of historic blocks. So this is a form of accounting for every transaction. So real world application examples. And well, let me read the real world examples. XO demonstrates how to construct basic transactions by playing tic-tac-toe. The XO transaction family includes includes create and take transactions with an exo command that allows two participants to play the game. For more information, see the introduction. So they've created a game off of this Hyperledger Sawtooth. Sawtooth supply chain helps you trace the provenance and the contextual information of any asset. Supply chain provides a complete example of application with a transaction processor, custom REST API, and web app. The application also demonstrates a secure and decentralized solution for in-browser transaction signing and illustrates how to synchronize the blockchain state to the local database for complex queries. For information, see the Sawtooth supply chain repo. What they're talking about is like we saw in the article about IBM in their food trust program. You can create something very similar with this platform. And what they're also saying is that got distracted there for a second. What they're also saying is that there's a browser component to this as well. So if you use something like Opera or Chrome, or even Firefox for that matter, this would actually be compatible with one of those browsers. More likely it would be Chrome, but I've heard Opera having compatibility with blockchain applications as well, or being an acceptable use of blockchain application. Sawtooth Marketplace allows users to exchange specific quantities of customized assets with other users on the blockchain. This application contains a number of components that together with a Sawtooth validator will run Sawtooth blockchain and provide a simple let me start from the beginning. This application contains a number of components that, together with a Sawtooth validator, will run Sawtooth blockchain and provide a simple RESTful API to interact with it. For more information, see this. So they already created a marketplace for this, similar to like a Google Play Store. All right. So getting started with application development, the Sawtooth documentation explains how to set up a local validator for demonstrating Sawtooth functionality and testing an application. Once running, you will be able to submit new transactions and fetch the resulting state and block data from the blockchain using HTTP and the Sawtooth REST API. Sawtooth validators can be run from pre-built Docker containers. So a Docker is like a virtual application machine, basically. Installed natively using Ubuntu 16.04 or launched in AWS from the AWS Marketplace. So this Sawtooth platform has a wide variety of platforms to support, including Docker. So I would actually extract Docker as one of the many platforms you're going to have to learn and integrate into your development when you start working on blockchain. Same thing with Ubuntu, which is Linux, and AWS. Develop a custom application. In Sawtooth, the data model and transaction language are implemented in a transaction family. Transaction families codify business rules used to modify state. With client programs, typically submit transactions in view state. You can build custom transaction families that reflect your unique requirements using the provided core transaction families as a model. Sawtooth provides REST API and SDKs in several languages, including Python, C++, Go, Java, JavaScript, and Rust for development of applications which run on top of the Sawtooth platform. In addition, you can write smart contracts in Solidity for use with the Ceph transaction family. So Solidity is the choice language used for smart contracts on Sawtooth, but there's also compatibility with Ceph, which is Sawtooth the Sawtooth interoperability with the Ethereum platform for smart contracts. So languages to learn here: Python, C++, Go, or Java, JavaScript, or Rust. Learn any one of them. Python is usually the most easiest. JavaScript is it's usually at the forefront of ease. So it goes JavaScript, Python, Go, and then C++, and then Java, and then Rust. So any one of those languages should be beneficial to you. So where would you go to learn about Linux? Where's the best place to go to learn about Linux? Let's go to Linux Foundation. Any book you should be able to learn, but for all intents and purposes, let's go to the Linux Foundation. They do have some training. All right. All right, so this is Intro to Linux, LFS 101. You have to master LFS 101 before you can even get involved in something like Hyperledger. And why this is important is because 1/3 of your time you're going to spend setting up the Hyperledger Sawtooth platform, which runs on Linux. And you're going to need to understand Linux to an extent where you don't have comfort and confidence going into this. So if you can pass all of this, 60 hours of course material, hands-on labs and assignments, 14 weeks of free access to online courses, audit mode, and also a paid certificate of completion, you really can't beat this. So it has 18 chapters: Intro to Linux, Linux philosophy, concepts, basics, graphical interfaces, command line common applications, system configuration, find Linux documentation, processes, file operations, text editors, user environment, manipulating text, network operations, bash, shell. I don't know why they call it bash shell. It should just be called bash. And basic scripting. So basic scripting is actually going to help you in blockchain development because that's really required. You're going to have to write some areas where you may need to automate, like logging in and logging off and things like that. Printing and local security principles. So you're going to need to understand the securing of a Linux platform, so you don't get bad guys trying to break in. This is very important. So let me drop this in the chat for people so that they have an understanding of what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. What else are we looking at here? All right, let me go back here. It also mentioned again, Python. You can find on Udemy Intro to Python. You should be able to find that anywhere on here. Let's see if I can find anything on here. Oh, this is new. Yeah, this is new right here. Hyperledger Sawtooth for application developers. Learn how to code a Hyperledger Sawtooth sample application. So this is actually really beneficial. I haven't seen this before. This is actually new to me, and it's free. Can't beat that. So there's 6 chapters: blockchain basics, Hyperledger Sawtooth, overview of application development, creating an application, Sawtooth simple supply, running the simple supply application, and course conclusion and final exam. The course requires programming experience with Python and JavaScript or similar language, such as well as general familiarity with protocol buffers. It is also helpful, though not required, to understand the basics of zero message queue or message library. The custom REST API in this course uses ZMQ to communicate with the validator. So you really can't go wrong with this. What you'll learn is blockchain concepts, Hyperledger Sawtooth basics, principles of application design, create a full-featured Hyperledger Sawtooth blockchain application, and run and troubleshoot an application. This is really new. I have never seen this before, and it's only 15 hours, 14 weeks of online free access. I'm going to drop this in the chat for you guys because I think this is very important. This is very butter laid, if I say so myself. Butter laid. Let me see. Where were we at? All right, let me go back to this real quick. So you're going to need to learn Docker because it mentions the Docker as one of the platforms as well. So let me throw Docker up in there. Okay, container fundamentals. Yeah, so container fundamentals. Yep. So this is the actual training module on container fundamentals and working with Docker and Kubernetes. So basically, Docker is a application virtualization platform that you use in the cloud. Most people use it in the cloud for cloud computing. If you talk about Docker, you're talking about the cloud. Containers are basically a part of the cloud. It's a way to run applications in there. Blockchain uses utilization with containers is very important. So let me throw this in there as well. 40 hours of course material, course introduction. Prerequisites: have a workstation that uses Linux, Mac, or Windows, familiarity with the command line, and basic understanding of the cloud. Access to Linux server or Linux desktop laptop if you're not accessing DigitalOcean. So this is going to be really cool. Let me drop this in the chat as well. All right. Yeah, I think this is it. I don't think you need anything else going forward. I think if you can learn, if you can follow those training modules, you should be good to go in terms of developing. I mean, I didn't even know that the application developers module was even available. This is new. If you can start developing apps on the blockchain, I can guarantee you right now, you are going to be a highly sought after person anywhere on this planet now. You basically write your own meal ticket at this point. I would go through the training modules, go through the Linux 101, LFS 101, go through the Python developer. Yeah, I'll click on that real quick. Make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, Hyperledger Sawtooth application, but I would actually look up a Python video. I know Engineering Cannabis has posted links before. If he could post another link to one of his Udemy videos or whatever it is that he uses, that would be great as well. Either in the chat or after the live stream ends, you can put that in the comment section. That would be great. You really can't beat all the information that's available. All of this stuff is free for the most part. You can't beat it. You can get a certificate of completion as well if you pay for it. So again, can't really beat that. And then go through container fundamentals. Container fundamentals is actually going to be very important once you get to the application stage. And you want to make sure you have a good laptop set up, man, a really powerful one too, because you're going to be doing a lot of multitasking and stuff like that. You don't want any slowdowns happening. Mac or Windows doesn't really matter. If you're going to use Windows, use a Linux virtual machine, VMware, KVM, well, not KVM. You can use Hyper-V. Any one of those will help. Yeah, I think if you're trying to get into it now, I think between January 2020, man, and December 2020, you should be straight. Yeah, keep it techie. Josh says VirtualBox. Yep, that's a good one, Josh. Thanks. Yeah, Christian says he prefers VM Workstation himself. Either one of those are going to work, man. Blockchain or data scientist engineer? Vince Jobert says, he asked the question, blockchain or data scientist engineer? You can be both. What's the best tools I want to learn how to code and program? Khan Academy. What's the best tools if I want to learn how to code and program? It's up to you. I mean, you don't really need tools. I mean, if you're just trying to learn JavaScript, if you're just trying to learn Python, you don't need a whole lot of tools. You need your browser. That's about it. Best way to learn blockchain, YouTube University, Solidity, and books. So you should be good, man. I posted the links in the chat so that you all can follow and catch on to. Go through the links as I posted them, and you should be fine. I think that we'll probably revisit this in about 6 months, man, and see where you all at in terms of blockchain development. They're using blockchain on the continent right now. I mean, we read an article earlier about the Caribbean, you know, the British Virgin Islands and a couple of other islands. I think Bermuda is actually using blockchain now. Also, let me make sure I drop the link in the chat for let me share this. Let me share this real quick. All right, this is from the Black Blockchain Summit of 2019. Black people are getting involved in this, man. They're getting involved. This was from last summer. Can't really beat this. So I love Black people. Look at that, man. Prosperity and independence. Black people are speaking out, man. They're starting to take advantage of this. Y'all, you guys are sitting on these panels, wasting your time every day. You better get involved in this type of stuff. We believe that through diligent use of technology and harnessing Black cultural competency, problems facing Black societies globally can be mitigated in a timely and effective manner. These are sort of conversations that they're having. Panel discussions. Where y'all at, though? Yeah, so this is what's going on, man. Let me drop the link in the chat so y'all can follow that as well. We got Josh on the panel, man.
Yo, what's up, Mike, man?
What it do? What it do, man?
Chilling. Yeah, I don't know much about blockchain. You know what I'm saying? That's why, I kind of stay off the panels. But I seen you talking about Linux and close to the end, so I just wanted to hop on, give a little input. But yeah, Linux, all the information out there is available for Linux. You can learn it. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to answer that question. One of the guys said in the chat, it was about what tools, what's the best tools if you want to learn how to code and programming or program. Um, it all depends on what programming language you try and get into.
Put some volume in your mic, Josh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me better? Hold on, let me make sure. Oh, that's why. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yeah, basically what I was going to say was it all depends on what programming language you're trying to get into as far as the tools. I know with Python, and I've been kind of studying up on it and learning it as best I can so I can start doing some videos on it. But I know Atom is a great text editor, especially if you have a Linux system. You can install Atom because it has a lot of extra tools that you can add on to it. It's basically a text editor, but it's got a lot of tools in the back end that are developed for it. And basically they call it a hackable text editor because of all the tools that are out there to add to it. And it'll help you with writing the code, organizing the code while you're writing it, as well as running the code within the text editor. You know, on most text editors, you gotta write the code and then call it from like a command line or something. So yeah, that's a good thing. Um, or one of the tools, I would recommend. And if you plan on getting into Python, just install Python on your system. That's all you got to do. That's the only tool you need, and then start going through the videos and learning it. It's not that long as far as learning it. It's just applying it to whatever you're trying to do. So
yeah, I want to make sure I drop this in the chat because somebody is asking about A+ certification. We talked about this many times before, but I'm a big proponent of Pearson Publishing. I think that they make the best books for A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus. It's the only book you're going to need. All of the questions and topics that are on the exam are covered in that book. If you can pass the questions in the book, you can pass the exam. This is the book right here. It comes with a voucher discount, and it covers the new exam as well. I can't recommend this book enough. I think Pearson makes the best books for CompTIA. I have not had any problems in the past. I've been taking exams for about all my career, and I recommend Pearson Publishing. So I'll drop that link in the chat for you. We got engineering candidates on the panel.
Hey, Mike, what's up?
What it do, man? You got to put some volume on your mic, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you good, bro.
In terms
you have any running water or any electricity?
We'll manage. We'll manage. Well, in terms of the blockchain, because I've been basically doing some scripting and coding on the blockchain for a couple of months, especially on Python. And it's basically easier because the library on Python gives you a lot of basically ways to basically navigate that blockchain, to build a code for blockchain. So I prefer using Python than using JavaScript. It's easier to basically use Python to basically code basically a whole blockchain itself, and even test it for. Especially one of the biggest part of the blockchain is creating hashing, basically a private key to basically store the block itself, to basically a key to verify the block itself. So it's much easier in Python if you can learn it in Python than JavaScript.
Yeah, that's actually good information as well. There's so many different ways you can go about this. You know, there's no one way to skin a cat.
Yeah, it's not.
And you know, Faber in the chat asked a question. Is Python Institute a good source for Python training and certification? I'm not a big fan of getting certified in programming languages. Either you can actually write a program, or either you can code or you can't. No, I don't think that you can actually certify, you know, for those sort of things.
Yeah, certifications for Python for a language, I don't think it's necessary. You just need to learn it. Learning it that's the most important part, and knowing the application, knowing where you're going to apply it to. But apart from that, I don't think a certification in Python is necessary.
Yeah, I agree. It don't matter. I mean, you could just, you know, if you do get certified, it's just pretty much a piece of paper you could put on your resume or add to your LinkedIn. But other than that, like what Mike said, either you can code or you can't.
Yeah.
And most jobs, they don't require certification. They require years of experience on that language. So no, most jobs don't ask for certification on Python or JavaScript. They just ask how many years have you utilized Python and JavaScript.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, we in IT they don't really look for things like that. They'll ask you for like a project that you've done. So you'll go to like GitHub.
GitHub. Yeah, Hadoop, all those stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can learn Bash, you should be pretty set to go. PowerShell, Bash, and then JavaScript, and then Python is usually the kind of linear progress that people go through. PowerShell is so basic, man. That's like the you know, that's like the beginning of system operating system programming. So that's where it is. I don't know what Josh, thinks about that, but maybe
no, it's the same thing. It's just like Bash too. That's like the beginning as well.
Yeah.
It's the base operating system, like programming language, that's built into Windows, and then Bash is the same thing for Linux.
You mean PowerShell for Windows?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, PowerShell.
Yeah. So when people ask us, do we support bashing? Yeah, we bash around here. We get our bash on a little bit around here, just on the operating system, not on agenda, man. We don't really do that, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. I think that blockchain. I think Hyperledger Sawtooth is going to be explosive this year. IBM uses Hyperledger Fabric. I was going to cover that initially, then I decided not to. Although they do similar things, Sawtooth and Fabric, Sawtooth is more dynamic because it supports public and private, or permission and permissionless. That's the difference between the two at that level of granularity. And Sawtooth supports Ethereum based contracts. And so because of that, it makes it a lot more interoperable with Ethereum based programming or applications when you want to plug and play. Fabric doesn't do that. Fabric
Hello?
be closed off.
Mike, because I was trying to understand the Sawtooth language, what this Sawtooth is. Is it an automated system to generate basically blocks of data? Since you said it was a dynamic process, so it's basically ever changing. So is it an automated system to create a blockchain itself, or what is that Sawtooth?
Sawtooth is a variation of distributed ledger technology. So they don't call it blockchain, but it's called DLT, right? So blockchain is actually the social name for distributed ledger. But in this regard, this doesn't have a token or a cryptocurrency attached to it. So it's just the distributed ledger. And so because of that, it's proof of elapsed time rather than proof of work. Like in Bitcoin, Bitcoin is proof of work. This is proof of elapsed time. This is much quicker and much more efficient for development and a lot more quicker. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I was just thinking if it's because it's stated that it has an equation or some. So I was wondering if it's a mathematical equation that basically generates blocks or chains or data or any kind of.
It supports chain code. If that's what you're asking, it supports chain code.
Okay. Now I get it. Okay. I get it.
Yep. That supports chain code. So this is just my opinion. I'm not no expert in blockchain architecture or anything like that, but I think that this is going to be huge going forward because of all of the capabilities that it has. IBM's Fabric is really good for what it does, but for this is going to be really different. This is like the next level of Ethereum, in my opinion. Ethereum is good, but this is better. And I think, like Josh is saying, learning Linux and stuff like that, man. I put the link in the chat. Free Linux 101 from Linux Foundation. That's the best platform you can get right now. You don't need to get certified in Linux for something like this. You just need to learn Linux, like the Hyperledger Sawtooth is saying. You need to know Linux enough in order to make it work, because you have to get it up and going. It's a platform. You have to get it up and going, and the way you get it up and going is through. Let me share my screen real quick before we get out of here, because I know that Prophet of Thought is supposed to be live. I want to go see that as well. Yeah. So if you look at this, let me zoom my screen in. It says sudo app key adv and then -- key server. You're basically calling up the Ubuntu server for the key generation. And so there's a repository that goes with this. So you can't make this work unless you understand Linux. You have to understand what sudo is. I mean, this is the extent of the amount of Linux you're going to be going through. If you look at this console output right here, you need to know what the -u stands for, the Sawtooth validator, settings, the validator registry. None of this is going to work unless you understand Linux. None of it is going to work. Learn Linux first, and then you can jump into this. Yep, bind. You're going to have to connect those networks together, man. It's not going to work without it. Pairing, static versus dynamic. They put all this information up here so that you can actually put this together and you can actually get it up and going. This is why I recommend it. That's why I recommended it. All right. I think Josh has given his recommendations on Josh, what are you using right now currently? What's your daily driver for Linux?
I use Arch Linux.
Okay, Arch.
Yeah, and that's kind of more of a difficult version of Linux to install, because it's when you installing it, it's mainly command line. And so if you don't understand how Linux works, it'll be pretty difficult for you to install.
Yeah.
So you got to have some understanding.
Mhm.
But most of the other Linux operating systems that you could use for this purpose, it has a desktop environment similar to Windows, so you shouldn't have a problem. You just have to, open up the command line and run those commands the way it's showing you by following those steps, and it lays it out for you. So,
Yep.
and just to throw this in there, I got like 20, 25 videos on basic Linux commands that you would see just from when you first getting into Linux. So, I mean, and that's why I do it. It's as a resource for people, to, if they don't understand something, or if they got a issue with like a specific command, they want to understand it, then my video kind of explains that. I'm not great at it. I just do it just to, it's almost like um what you call that,
Mhm.
donation type, or whatever you want to call it, giving back. That's the way I look at it.
Yep.
You know.
Pretty philanthropy.
Yep.
Engineer Cannabis, you have any closing thoughts on this before we get out? I think Engineer Cannabis is feeding his seed right now. Yeah, Gabe says copy, paste, and enter. Yeah, that's cool, but if you don't understand why your blockchain is not working, that's not going to help. That's cool that you do that, but that's not going to help. You got to understand why something is not working within the Linux system itself, or why the blockchain is not functioning the way that it should.
Yeah, if something happens and you got to let's say for instance restarting the service, if you don't know the command is sudo systemctl restart or stop and then start the actual program, you know what I'm saying, then you ain't gonna know what you're doing,
Yeah, yeah. If a system stops working, it's one of those things you can't just copy and paste your way out. That's not going to be the deal. You got to understand why Hyperledger blockchain is not processing a transaction. Very huge. Not knocking you, Gabe, but that's the way it is, man, in this part of the world. So,
and you're right, Gabe, it's not that difficult, but for somebody that's never actually seen it, it is, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah. Most people
And
use Windows, so they're pretty baby.
quit trolling, Gabe. That's what he doing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so. Share the video if possible. Also hit that notification bell. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those on the community tab, docket and description beneath the video. Also, thank you to Engineering Cannabis and Keep It Techie for coming up here and bringing their opinions. See you over there at the Prophet of Thought. Shalom.